Hey everybody, welcome to week 12. Excited to have you guys again here for this week. This is the final week in 3 months of work, 12 whole weeks of work. Super proud of you guys. You should give yourself a pat on the back too. It's no small feat to have done this every week for a solid 3 months. We hope you've enjoyed it so far. We're gonna keep pushing you guys. We're gonna keep pushing along. Rory's got another set of workouts for us today, and every one of these is building off of the ones previously. So, Rory, what do you got for us?
So week 12, we're going to start off with our strength and stamina portion. We're going to start off with some chest flies. We're going to hit 15 reps of chest flies, so there's a banded chest flies. Then we're going to move on to some glute bridge extensions, a new movement that we're adding in today, and then finishing our strength and stamina with 30 seconds of side plank on each side. All right, movement number 1 for this week is the chest fly. I would say you're going to want to grab those bands, probably a moderate tension on those bands, and you're going to want to have it, I would say right around belly button height or hip height on whatever you're fixing it to. So Dr. Joe is going to be turned backwards towards the bands. He's going to grab them with his hands. Big thing here is making sure our core is nice and strong and stable. So number 1 we could do is we could just make sure, right, that he's strong and stable before he starts. If that's a challenge when we start these flies, he could bend his knees lightly. That sometimes alleviates kicking out our lower back. And then lastly, what we could do is we could get a little bit of stagger step, which I'm going to ask Dr. Joe to do. So this would be a good starting stance here. He's going to start with his hands out nice and wide. These are going to be flies. He's going to do his best to bring his hands all the way together in the front and get back to having those hands right behind his shoulder in the back. When he's coming forward, he's working on squeezing that chest together. When he's coming back, he's really focusing on not losing tension or controlling those bands on the way back.
We're not flapping like a bird.
Nope.
Strong, steady, and controlled. Pulling from your chest, squeeze, pause for half a second, and come back.
Right. It is almost a win on these. 15 reps is what we're looking for. If you can pause in the extension for a quick second and bring yourself back slowly, that's a win. We're looking for time under tension. So if these 15 reps took you 45 seconds, that would be a good thing rather than kind of floating through them just a little bit too quick.
Perfect.
Movement number 2 for this week is a new one. It's called Glute Bridge extension. So a couple points of performance we want to focus on being here. So first of all, we want to be flat on the floor, digging his shoulders in. He's going to put his hands nice and flat on the floor to help him brace. Next thing Joe's going to do is pop his hips up nice and tall. This is one of the things I want you to focus on, is really squeezing those glutes and keeping those hips tall during the movement. So what we're working on is 5 on each side of these, and what I'm going to ask Dr. Joe to do is take this outside leg that's facing the camera here, and he's going to point that toe up towards the ceiling and bring it back down flat on the floor. Point it up towards the ceiling and back down on the floor. Good. And what we really want to focus on is when he's coming up and down, he's going to give us a 4 rep here. When he comes up, it's easy to let those hips fall to the ground, and then they pop up as he comes back down. What we want to focus on, keeping that tension in those glutes the entirety of the movement. So this is full range of motion. If we can only bring those feet off about halfway before we maybe lose a little balance, that's completely okay. And you could also march, where you don't actually bring your feet up towards the ceiling, you just simply march. But our goal here is keeping tension in the hamstrings, keeping tension in the glutes throughout the movement. 5 with each leg. Movement number 3, we're looking for 30 seconds of accumulated time on each side here. So this might take you a bit. We're not expecting for you to do 30 seconds unbroken by any means. This is a side plank. So Dr. Joe is going to be having his elbow fastened nice and strong into the floor. We're looking for his shoulder to run to his hip and then down to his ankle, really working on this oblique here. Okay, 30 seconds of accumulated time. Way to modify this is he could slide down. Okay, you probably bring those feet behind him just a touch, and he could be down on his knees, but he's still keeping that core nice and tight. So once he's done with 30 seconds here, he would flip over the other way and finish with 30 seconds on that other side. So feel free to take those breaks. We're looking quality on that movement throughout. Next up, we're going to be moving through the conditioning portion of today. It is 3 rounds of 3 different movements. Movement number 1 is a high knee, so we're adding that in for this week. Then we're going to be focusing on air squats and then finishing each round with a plank walk. Movement number 1 for the conditioning portion is high knees. So what we're going to see Dr. Joe doing with these fancy new running shoes is getting up on the balls of the feet and driving his knees as high as he can, hopefully getting up above the belly button. So we're aiming for 20 high knees, 10 with each leg, right? If that is something we need to modify or bring down, he could simply become a little bit static with the movement, where he's being intentional, raising those knees nice and high and alternating between. If we need to modify further than there, he could really just focus on driving those knees up off the floor as needed. If you need to modify, but you feel like your modification maybe isn't quite as much work, you could up those reps to 30 or something like that. Second movement of the conditioning portion is the air squat, basic movement that we've been working on kind of week after week, building on week after week anyways. So he's got his feet about shoulder width, maybe outside shoulder width apart, but we're focused on keeping that chest nice and tall. He's gonna hinge, push his butt back, squat down below parallel, getting those hips below his knees and standing up tall. Looking for 15 reps of these. Common modifications would be not getting down quite so deep, probably trying to get about halfway down, making sure he's still driving tall and squeezing his butt to extension at the top. And lastly, is just modifying that even more, and just pushing those hips back just a little bit, but still focusing on that full extension at the top of the movement.
And at the top too, like Roy said, when you get to this point, you're squeezing your butt really, really tight, just like in the glute bridge. This is a posterior body that we're trying to strengthen, your glutes, your hamstrings, and you're still getting some quads too. But we want those sitting muscles to strengthen with this. So when you get to the top, squeeze really tight, and then right back down. Squeeze really tight and right back down.
And a common fault with an air squat, it seems like a very simple movement, is not actually squeezing your butt at the top and extending your hips. So we could squat at the top, it sure looks like I'm squeezing my butt. My butt is not activated at all. It's just my hips that are extending. So make sure when you stand up, you're squeezing your butt cheeks nice and tight together.
Squeeze your butt.
Squeeze it tight. Last movement for today is the plank walks. All right, so what Dr. Joe is going to show us here, he's going to get into that high plank position, what we were working on. So glutes are squeezed, core is nice and tight, arms are good and locked out. What he's going to do is stay in that high plank position. He's going to take 5 steps to his left. So as small he wants to make them or as large he wants to make them. Notice how he's staying strong and steady. Now he's going to come back with 5 steps to the right, back to his original position. That is 1 rep technically, and what we are looking for is 2 of these reps. So then he would go all the way back out for 5 steps and come back all the way in. So common faults would be, he's going to show us now, is letting those hips sag to the floor and just losing all the tension that he has through that core.
That's almost harder.
That probably is harder. make sure you're taking the easy route by doing it right. Common modification here, and it's something that you might want to, if you're going to be on your knees, you might want to put a pillow down or just something soft so you're not scraping up your knees depending on what kind of surface you're on. He's going to keep those knees tight together, but it definitely makes it easier on the core to do those steps out to the right and back to the left. Remember, we're looking for 5 steps out, 5 steps back, and 2 reps of that. My preference would be for you to try and do those 2 unbroken and then take a large bit of rest after that instead of resting in between. All right, everybody, so that wraps up week 12. Appreciate you joining us for these first 12 weeks. Certainly give us any feedback. We might be changing up how we do things going forward. So if you have any feedback how you want to see things laid out, certainly go ahead and let us know.
Yeah, and we love all you guys. Again, reach out with anything. We want to be here to serve you as much as possible. That's our goal, is to make stronger humans out of you guys, so you guys be around and do everything you want to be able to accomplish. So reach out, have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
Week 13 next week. So movement number 1 for this movement number 1.